Good evening, everybody. I extend a very warm welcome to all of you as we gather here and are gathering here to commence Technical Session 7, Urban Mobility Systems Towards Resilient Connectivity. 50 years ago, NIUA was founded on the conviction that India's cities needed serious, sustained intellectual attention. So we mark the day today by reflecting on these 50 years of continuous hard work and rigor that has shaped how India thinks about its cities. But while we look back on what is truly a remarkable journey, we also emphasize this as an opportunity to collectively envision the road ahead, which is towards a Viksit Bharat by 2047. And the road ahead is quite literally what this session is about. The cities we have today look nothing like the cities of 1976 when NIUA first started operating. Likewise, the cities of 2047 will look nothing like the ones we know today. So ladies and gentlemen, with a sizable gap between our present realities and future estimations, we're gathered here today to understand what it is that India can collectively do to bridge it and plan properly for a future that needs to be, despite all projected challenges, everything for everyone all the time. Urban mobility sits right at the center of our discussion today. As India charges into the future, the livability of our cities hinges on a simple yet massive question: how well can our citizens truly move? We know that the pulse of city life depends entirely on the flow of its transit and the quality of urban movement. Mobility connects people to opportunities, businesses to markets, and communities to essential services. However, in an era marked by climate uncertainty, rapid rural-urban transitions, technological disruption, and growing infrastructure demands, connectivity alone is no longer sufficient. What our cities really need is resilient connectivity. So the theme of this session, therefore, is very aptly urban mobility systems towards resilient connectivity, because it invites us to rethink mobility as a system that is not only efficient, that is not only accessible, but it is also adaptable, it's inclusive, sustainable, and very, very importantly, it is capable of withstanding future shocks, whatever they may be. So the theme of this session is both timely and very, very significant. This is why in a Viksit Bharat, people will move through cities reliably, safely, and equitably, because our collective goal is to build mobility systems that remain uninterrupted, that can adapt to changing circumstances, and that can recover swiftly in the aftermath, ensuring that urban life can continue seamlessly, even in the face of uncertainty. And this is the conversation that is before us today, and we have exactly the right people to have it. Our speakers today bring deep expertise and diverse perspectives to this conversation on integrated transport, on sustainable and climate resilient infrastructure, on smart technologies and data, on inclusive access, and on the governance and planning frameworks that make resilience possible at scale. And it is my great privilege to introduce them to you today. First, it is my honor to welcome the chair of this session, Mr. Ajay Mathur, Director of the Urban Mass Transit Company, UMTC, who will be kickstarting the proceedings by reflecting more on the session agenda and really setting the ball rolling for all of us. Sir is an infrastructure and urban mobility leader with over 40 years of experience spanning transportation, road, and energy sectors. He has served as the Managing Director and CEO of UMTC for 14 years, leading its transformation into one of India's leading specialist urban transport advisory firms. He has played a very, very pivotal role in shaping urban mobility strategies, public transport initiatives, and sustainable transport programs across India. Currently an independent consultant and non-executive director, Mr. Mathur brings deep expertise in leadership, stakeholder engagement, business transformation, and the delivery of complex infrastructure projects. So, sir, we're very, very grateful for your time, and we're very eager to hear from you. So, sir, over to you. Oh, okay. So, sir, if you could join us on the dais. Can we have a round of applause? Okay, then before we move into the speeches, I'll introduce our panel and our speakers one by one. Okay. Can we have another round of applause? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Before we move into the formal session, just allow me some time to formally invite and introduce our speakers and our panelists to you. We have our session moderator, Shri Jaydeep sir. He is the Officer on Special Duty, Urban Transport for the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. In our distinguished panel, we have Mr. Shailab Goel, Managing Director, National Capital Region Transport Corporation Limited, or the NCRTC. We also have with us Ms. Aswati Dilip. She is the Managing Director for the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy, or ITDP India. We have also with us Mr. Kishore Nathani, Managing Director and CEO of the Urban Mass Transit Company, UMTC. We have further with us Dr. Darshini Mahadevia, Professor, School of Arts and Sciences from Ahmedabad University. And lastly, we have Mr. Sharif Kamar, Associate Director, Transport and Urban Governance Division, TERI. It goes without saying that all of our distinguished panelists have years and years and years of experience in the sector, so they're really the best people to have and lead this conversation today. So without further ado, sir, over to you.
Somebody should. It's been right. Yes. So this is not working. Yes. Good evening, everybody. And this is last session. I can see that presence is not enough, but we have to start our session because some of our colleagues who are sitting on dais have to leave to catch flight. This is a very, very apt subject. When we talk of urban mobility, it is interlinked with urban development. And it is, this urban mobility is related with the livability, this development around the city, economic development, and many more things which a urban transport system brings to the city. Often we talk about that it is sustainable urban transport system, it should be energy efficient, it should be accessible, it should be comfortable, it should be reliable, it should be safe, secure, blah blah. But whenever we design any system, urban transport system, we design it from the perspective of resilient system. And it is a very, very apt topic whenever we select any urban transport system, whenever we design any transport system, and when we plan it. It is a very, very essential part. What is resilient system? That it should be able to anticipate, absorb, adopt, and recover from shock. In metro system, which we are constructing under our ministry, that whenever we design, when we talk about resilient, then we that the things, the big, best thing which comes in our mind, that system is resilient means it is, when flood will come, then system will withstand, transport system will continue. If you see Delhi, lot of roads gets flooded in 1 hour or 2 hour rain, but metro system continues. So whenever it is designed, it is, this is inbuilt. And likewise, if there is any earthquake, it should withstand. So these are the things. But resilient, I think it goes beyond these things. And one good example of technical resilience, one day we both were sitting discussing some project. So he told, that was last winter, he told that we have built a Delhi Meerut system and it is working at semi-high speed at 160 km per hour. But if you see that it's a foggy weather, all flights and trains are delayed. But we have deployed a signaling system which is a state of art, and there is no effect of fog because they get all signaling in the cab itself. So they need not to restrict the speed of the train. So that is a resilience kind of thing which has been ill-built when they designed this system, then they planned this system, and accordingly they have deployed best of the technology available in the world. Otherwise, for a high speed operation which is going to stop, if you are going to stop a train, it is not like car, it is going to stop after 600, 700 meter. It has to travel. This kind of system with technological intervention, yes, it is possible to run train at the same speed. Next thing is this, that when we plan it in our policies, it is written that we should have UMTA, that is Unified Metropolitan Transport Authority. What is this? That is for organizational resilience, to create a organizational resilience, so that a planning resilience should be there. While planning this system, it should be holistic plan, and everything, it should not be standalone planning. Otherwise, you will fail. If something is not there, so then system will not come. Then when we sanction any project, any bus project or anything, any kind of metro project, RRTS project, we also look that what is the financial, how this system will be financially viable. What we are trying to create? We are creating a financial resilience. By what that from fare box there is a limitation that we can get money. We can't increase fare beyond certain limit. So we have to keep it within that limit. Then what happens? Then we plan for non-fare revenue. It can be in the form of advertisement, in form of spaces, in form of land parcel development, TOD, etc., etc. What we are trying to create? We are trying to create a financial resilience. In long run, if something, if in initial phases, what happens? That ridership doesn't come. It comes after some time. If you have this kind of value capture financing tools, then your non-fare revenue will increase and it will be a sustainable transport system. Then in e-vehicle which is being deployed, what is the purpose? That we have to reduce our dependence upon fossil fuel. Under this central government schemes, around 10,000 plus 25,000 buses are being deployed, electric buses are deployed. This is basically to increase number of buses, to provide more number of buses, at the same time to have less dependence upon fossil fuel, which we are witnessing in this Gulf crisis, recent Gulf crisis. One more thing which has come in the morning session by our principal secretary to Prime Minister Dr. P.K. Mishra sir has told that system, you should design a system, it should be resilient, but it should be anti-fragile. And he said that anti-fragile means that resilient system, it can withstand this shocks, but a anti-fragile system, when it meets the shock, it becomes more resilient. So we have to plan with so much software modification and all these things, with our system, our technology upgradation. We should plan our system that once shock comes, it should become more resilient. And now since we are running late, I will request our session chair to set the tone of this important topic on this resilient mobility. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaideep. I think you've already set the tone. Uh, but just to add to what Jaideep has already said, our session topic has two words, resilient and connectivity. To my mind, they are inseparable. Connectivity doesn't mean connecting two points through a transport system. That cannot be the only thing. Connectivity means that the system should have the ability to withstand adverse events, and we have seen many such events in the recent past. We had a pandemic, we had cloudbursts, we had flooding, and as Kate just recently pointed out, the Delhi Meerut system was able to withstand an adverse weather effect. That is the kind of system. Because if the system cannot stand disruption, then there are consequences. The consequences for livelihood, there's loss of livelihood, especially for daily wage earners. There is a fracture of the supply chain. There is a general economic downturn every time a transport system or an urban mobility system gets disrupted. And resilience is what? Resilience is the ability for a system to bounce back, to absorb those disturbances, adapt real time, and as Kathleen was pointed out earlier, it should be recoverable. So the system is quickly back. So what the term is anti-fragile is basically the system bounces back quickly. Integrated multimodal development, mobility as a service, transit-oriented development, these are all various strands of a connected resilient system. The challenge before us is, and it's something which I would think that expert panel will dwell on, is how to weave all these strands together to build a system which is adaptable, inclusive, because one of the consequences of disruption is the most vulnerable groups, like women, elderly, who face the biggest challenge. So we have to find a way to weave these different strands, including some points which have been raised by Jaideep, how can we have the institutional system which will allow us to put these systems together, how do we build in financial resilience, and what kind of data standards are required. We have, of course, a very distinguished and a very diverse panel. So we have experts from various different fields, and I hope that some of these issues they will discuss, and we'll be able to come up with some kind of a plan or a blueprint for the future mobility. Thank you.
I will start my first question with Shri Shalabh Goyal, who is MD NCRTC. They are running Delhi Meerut corridor, and it is with this network, this Delhi Meerut journey is covered in less than an hour. My first question is this: what lessons can Indian cities learn from international best practices in resilient urban transport planning, disaster preparedness, and recovery mechanisms? And you must have incorporated these things in your system, which has been recently built, and future system which is likely to come in times to come.
Thank you, Jaideep ji. If we talk of resilience, as has been told earlier, I think the perfect example is of COVID, when the complete country was facing the crisis, but the country bounced back, and the different systems, the different government systems as well as the private systems, they came to the fore and they came to the rescue, and we could survive. So these kind of resilient systems have been built in the various kind of transportation systems, including what we have done in NCRTC. And in fact, while we were conceiving NCRTC, we studied the best practices across the globe, and we chose the best of technologies, the best of specifications, and as a result of this, the result is in front of everyone to see. The trains can move at 160 kmph even when there is a fog in the NCR region, or even when there are heavy rains or heavy winds, the trains can still run at 160 kmph because the systems have been designed to take care of the extreme weather conditions. The specifications have been drawn accordingly, and accordingly the IEC and the IS specifications for the various electrical equipments and various other equipments have been so chosen. The signaling system has also been chosen accordingly. For example, we have got ETCS level 2 hybrid level 3 system, which is the European system, but we have further modified it so that it operates on LTE, it operates on LTE 4G. So as a result of this, even when we are having heavy rains, the trains can still run at a headway of say 3 minutes, even if there's a heavy fog. These things have been taken care of. Most of our corridor is elevated, so even if there are heavy floods taking place, if there's a water logging taking place, the trains are not going to stop. And resilience is not only technical. Resilience has to take care of the different walks of life, the different sectors, the different commuters which travel in our corridor. For example, the ladies, the elderly, the children. The systems have been designed in terms of security. There is security at the stations, inside the trains. There are CCTV cameras in, and one can raise an alarm at the appropriate moment. And now we are also using AI to determine problems like if there is a fight between two persons, or if there is a problem in the ladies' coach. Even that can be identified, and a alarm can be generated. So all these kind of systems lead to an overall resilience system. If a person is not well, then how the system takes care of it. If for example, it has to be financially viable, financial resilience also. Electricity charges, the energy charges, for example, constitute about 1/3 of the total operating cost. What happens if, suppose tomorrow the electricity boards increase their charges drastically, then what happens to that? So as a result of this, we are already taking care of that by setting up of our own land-based solar power plant. So that takes care of most of the energy requirements. So any system which we design, it has to take care of the worst possible scenarios which may arise in future. And this we have learned from across the different metro sectors, different RRT systems across the globe. And as a result of this, what we have taken is the best of practice, and so far things have been good. And I'm sure that they'll come in good stead in times to come with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalabh. That yes, any system which is designed, we design it keeping in view to face the worst situation. You have mentioned about this financial resilience and about the safety of the women passenger and the signaling system which you have discussed. Now I move on to Dr. Darshini Mahadevia, Professor, School of Arts and Science, Ahmedabad University. My question is, what are the social, economic and environmental consequences of failing to build resilient urban mobility systems in the context of rapid urbanization and climate change?
So when we talk about, firstly, thank you so much, Jaideep and for setting the tone, and also Dr. Mathur for setting the tone of the session. I also would like to thank Ministry and NIUA for this invitation. When we talk about resilient connectivity, we are talking about two dimensions of it. One is connectivity itself. Given the fact that we need to improve connectivity in our own cities, particularly in the context when we see in last about 2 decades, there's a lot of urban sprawl that has occurred in our cities. And connectivity has become a challenge for very large sections of population, particularly low-income groups which are peripheralized, because we see affordable housing coming up on the periphery of cities, but also women, because when they're peripheralized, the men tend to use private vehicles, whereas when women who depend on public transport, their access is limited. And a lot of primary surveys are telling us that they may drop out of the labor force, and there are consequences on families' income and poverty elevation. Second thing, access of children to schools, because peripheral areas have limited infrastructure, health and education infrastructure. It will come over time, but it takes a while because our own development model is that first the housing comes up and then the infrastructure comes up. And so there are multiple linkages and consequences of lack of connectivity. Secondly, in times of disasters, lack of connectivity compounds vulnerabilities. Because, for example, in COVID, for example, we had seen that peripheral communities, informal housing, access to food itself was a big challenge to reaching out to them. And in lack of public transport or lack of any transport, and transport had stopped, this access had become really challenging in these communities where there were elderly people or people with chronic illnesses such as cancer, etc., who required regular treatment. Their access to health care had become also very challenging. So resilience to disasters is linked to also provision of connectivity, increasing connectivity. And there's a kind of symbiotic relationship between the two. And so we need to improve that connectivity. Second thing is that resilience is also if we are reducing travel length. So if your trip lengths are within limit or trip lengths are low, you can use non-motorized transport options in times of disaster. So if there is flood, one can always walk on the footpath. So we need to also, that's why connectivity and resilience are linked. Environmental consequences, of course, are very severe with the kind of transport model that we have followed till now. I think all our cities now have very high pollution levels, and among the 20 most polluted cities or 20 most hot cities in the world, our cities are figuring. It's not that we can't do it. About 20 years back, it was said for the Chinese cities that the most polluted cities in China, in the world were Chinese cities. And I remember when I was first time in China in 2004, I was waiting for a day to take good photograph. And there was not a single day where one could do because of very high fog levels. So, and then this impact on health are very, very severe on account of air pollution. I think I don't need to say that, but there is, as Jaideep ji started by saying, that transport has very, very strong linkages. And we had never seen, till now we had not seen that. It's a very strong input to development in a holistic sense. Economic growth, livelihood, access. It provides livelihood, but also access to livelihood. And we see in particularly case of low-income women, they tend to walk to their work because they can't afford. And that's why their access to work is limited within a kilometer or two where they can walk, or else 1/3 or 1/2 of their income is going on transportation. So there are this very strong linkages with all SDGs. Gender is a very, very strong linkage, education and health, livelihood, and of course climate change goals that we have. Resilient cities also has very strong linkage with. And so in the nutshell, I think if I answer, transport is the central part along with housing for better improvement in all aspects of development at the city level. Thank you.
Thank you, Darshini. And you have mentioned that accessibility of the transport system is very important. It may be with women, with children, and you have also mentioned that low trip lengths can make transport a resilient system. With this question, I move to Aswati, a connected question. How can we design our city to make the people living therein less dependent upon any type of transport for intra-city movement?
Sure, sir. Thank you so much for the question and for inviting us to this particular esteemed panel. So I think Darshini ma'am kind of put some really key points here just in the beginning, where she said that trip lengths are very, very important. And even from the morning that we're hearing is that Indian cities originally they were compact, they were dense, they were mixed use. But as in the last decades with motorization, we've sprawled and our trip lengths have increased. For example, in Delhi, our trip length was around 6 kilometers, an average trip length in 2006-2007, which is now almost doubled to reach around 11 in 2017. And I'm sure as we're sitting here in 2026, it must be much higher as well. So what we need to do is that, we can see around that international cities like Paris has embraced a 15-minute city concept, or even cities like Singapore that we saw today in the morning in the plenary session as well, where they've embraced concepts like 20-minute neighborhoods as well as 45-minute cities. Now, this is very much what our cities were in the past, and that's the history that we need to go back to. I'd like to focus on 3 planning principles and 3 mobility strategies. First is that compact. We need to create cities that grow inward rather than endlessly grow outward. Now, if you do need to grow inward, we definitely need to look at increasing our densities in the city cores. So instead of pushing growth towards the periphery, we need to look at how we can accommodate more people around the transit corridors that our cities are creating, the high frequency bus routes as well as the metro corridors. And finally, as we create the compact dense neighborhoods, they need to be mixed use such that people can work, they can live, they can go to play, they can go to healthcare facilities, etc. Now, while these are the 3 planning strategies that I'd like to focus on, I'd also like to say that this is only possible if we have strong mobility strategies that go hand in hand with them. And here I'd like to start by saying that often when you talk about increasing density in Indian cities, the first pushback that you hear is that with more people comes more cars, our cities are already congested, we cannot take any more cars. But more people does not need to relate to more cars. If we can look at embracing travel demand measures like parking charges or congestion pricing, or even low emission zones to ensure that polluting vehicles are kind of reduced on our streets, we can definitely look at having dense neighborhoods, but without really increasing congestion in our cities. But this is possible only if we provide good quality other choices for our citizens. So high quality public transport will need to work as the backbone for these cities, which are well connected by walking and cycling networks. Now, one of the things that we had seen when we'd done a study of about 10 cities across the country, from Kochi, Gangtok, Bhubaneswar, Srinagar, Chennai, Pune, etc., was that when we compared streets which had shading infrastructure and walking facilities against streets which did not have shading infrastructure, the difference in temperature was anywhere between 3 to 4 degrees to as much as 10 degrees. So just by creating walking infrastructure with good quality shade, this one strategy can also improve resilience by acting as a very strong cooling strategy for our cities as well. I'd like to just sum up by saying that Indian cities are already moving in this direction. Pimpri-Chinchwad, for example, has adopted a non-motorized transport policy. They're looking at creating Harit Setu neighborhoods, which are 15-minute neighborhoods. There is one neighborhood pilot which is under implementation. The city has around 60 kilometers of BRT, 10 kilometers of metro. It's adopting a parking policy, looking at implementing the parking policy, and also implementing a low emission zone. So, of course, there are cities in India that are thinking comprehensively. The challenge for us in the next decade is scaling up. From one neighborhood, how do we go to citywide? From a few corridors, how do we make sure that this entire city parking is managed? So, as Sir currently put it when he asked me this question, the point is that the most sustainable trip in our cities is not going to be the trip that's made on an electric vehicle or a trip that's going to be made on public transport. It is that trip that doesn't even need to be made, or that can be made on foot, because our daily needs are within our reach. Thank you.
Very, very valid thing that if this is 15-minute city, then there is no need of any kind of transport system, whether it is personal transport or public transport. So we should hit on the need of the transport system. And I agree with her that with active mobility, we can solve many of our problems, and it should be scalable. It should not be confined to few corridors or few parts of the city. It should be in the entire city. Now I move to Mr. Sharif Kamar from Terry, and my question is how electric vehicle penetration is helping country to reduce dependence upon fossil fuel, and what are the challenges you envisage in this endeavor?
Great. Thank you so much, and thanks to the audience for being here. And congratulations to NIUA on the 50th anniversary. I would say, as an optimist, 50 years, 50% job done, but there's still 50% that needs to be done. And the glass is half full. I'm not saying glass is half empty. On that note, before jumping into the response to the question, so at Terry, we have been involved in multiple studies in the transportation sector, where we have studied socio-economic impact assessment, not only for the metros, particularly DMRC, but we have also studied the socio-economic impact assessment for electric buses, and that's where some of the points that ma'am mentioned about peripherization of and that's where electric buses and public transport, even in tier 2 smaller cities, that GCM, Green Cell Mobility, has been deploying in Uttar Pradesh. We studied, and they were very positive about the implementation of public transport system at tier 2 cities as well. We have also been carrying out initiatives such as Carbon Light of DMRC, where we are ensuring that the carbon saved by, if you book a ticket in Delhi Metro, you'll see a small message saying that by choosing metro, you have saved this much of carbon. And that's where the numbers that we churned out and shared with Delhi Metro. And of course, the lives, if you're talking about resilient infrastructure and mobility, so life cycle assessment of civil construction work of metro is something that we are currently undertaking and in Delhi and Bangalore. And hopefully in future, these recommendations would be put in the feasibility and the DPR stage so that greener technologies and materials are used during the construction work as well. So on that note, responding to the question on electric vehicles, of course, EVs get a lot of eyeballs and limelights in terms of focus of the media as well. But I think before we get into the answer, I think very recently the Honorable Prime Minister also mentioned about to deal with the current crisis, we need to have more EVs on road so as the energy security is taken care of. I think the messaging is very clear. It's not only environment friendly, but it's also good in terms of cost and foreign exchange saving as well. In terms of, if you look and just throwing some numbers to the audience as well, India consumed about 45 million tons of gasoline, petrol last year, 25-26, and about 95 million tons of diesel last year. Almost 100% of gasoline, petrol is consumed by the transport sector. 80% of diesel is consumed by the transport sector in India. Now, if you further break down in terms of gasoline and diesel, gasoline, about 60% of petrol is consumed by four-wheelers, 30% by two-wheelers, and 10% by other vehicles in terms of utility vehicles, etc. In diesel, about 55 to 60% is consumed by the heavy-duty vehicle and the bus segment. And the remaining, of course, by other cars, jeeps, and other segments as well. Tractors in the agriculture sector, and of course, railways is one of the biggest consumer in terms of retail consumer. With that context, EVs then from a macro perspective in terms of energy security, and at the micro perspective from a cost saving to individual in the current scenario of rising fuel prices, I think that gives a dual benefit to the citizens as well as the government at the macro level. Very recently, we conducted one study for Department of Post India, India Post, and there we, of course, being a government department, there were, and there is no as such road plan for Department of Post for EV adoption. So we came in, we studied their operations in 6 cities in India. And we came up with a number which said that if you are going to adopt electric vehicles, for the light commercial vehicle urban mobility solutions, the TCO will come to be about 2.10 paisa, 2 rupees 10 paisa per kilometer for electric vehicles, as compared to the existing diesel number of about 8 to 10 rupees per kilometer. Thankfully, they heard us and they deployed 2 electric vehicles in Delhi, and they ran it for 6 months, came up with the TCO numbers, and told us that, you said 2 rupees 10 paisa, we are getting 1.94 rupees. And they were pretty surprised in terms of cost saving that they are managing. And basis that 2 vehicles that were deployed as pilot, they are now deploying 65 vehicles, and they have already ordered the contract, which will be running in the northeast, in Jammu, in south, as well as in the western part of the country as well. So you'll see electric vehicles in India Post fleet very soon, with the environment and cost benefit that we can accrue to. So that's something on the India Post side, but on the electric bus and heavy duty vehicle segment, as I mentioned, 50% or 55% of diesel consumption, that gives a huge saving opportunity. One bus, if it's traveling about 60,000 kilometers per year, if you just do the rough math, you would come at about 40 to 45 tons of CO2 saved per bus per year. And if you multiply these numbers, so about 15,000 liters of diesel it would consume by running about 60,000 kilometers per year. So it's a huge saving that you would do in terms of diesel consumption as well. So broadly speaking, 2 things. One, of course, from the environmental point of view, EVs score better. And from cost saving and foreign exchange saving, it's much better as compared to other modes or technologies that we have right now. I'll be happy to come up with more information, but I'll stop here for the interest of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharif. That yes, you have mentioned about that how much saving is can be done if we switch over to electric vehicle. Now I move on to Shri Kishore Nathani. My question is, how can mobility as a service platform transforms urban travel behavior and improve system-wide connectivity?
Thank you, Mr. Jaideep. Being an operational logistics man, and since we'll be talking about mass, so I will mix and match the things. Hindi and English will go together.
Yes.
That is how it is. Mass is all about Mishrana. So, my fellow panelist on the left talked about typically जो इंडिया में approach हो गया है, more people, more cars. That's the typical approach which is now taking momentum. And frankly, the need of the hour is more people, more mass. And when I say mass, it's not a typical mass which we were talking about, mass transit, but mobility as a service. And when we talk about mobility as a service, I would say that the proponent of the mobility as a service in India, the ideation or the thought, initial thought which came to all of us was from Mr. Mathur, who is now chairing this particular session. I would be glad to state that. And we as UMTC took a cue from him. So mobility as a service is, I would say, very simple. एक दर्जी होता है, उसको आप कपड़ा दे दो, वो सब कुछ स्टिच करके दे देता है आपको. तो mobility as a service is just stitching everything. You would have the consumers at one end, you would have the suppliers at one end, all being stitched together. But typically आज जो हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं, अगर हमको जैसे नोएडा से दिल्ली आना पड़ता है, तो on an average we would be using about 3 to 4 odd apps. एक नोएडा का मेट्रो का इस्तेमाल कर लिया, एक दिल्ली मेट्रो का कर लिया, and if you want to come to this place, If the metro is a little far, then you will take an Uber. 3 or 4 apps you're using at a general level. Every time you open that app, take that ride, plan that ride, take that ride, make the payment. Delhi, Noida, Uber, and maybe even if you have taken an auto, you generally do that same thing. Mass is something which actually brings everything together. So it is not a बोझ, mass लगता है कि बहुत हमारे पर load आ गया. Mass is an enabler. And examples of small masses has been done in India, tested in India, but I would say commercial deployment of mass actually took place outside India, and there are learnings from that. So you would have public transport, you would have cars, you would have taxis, you would have those electric scooties, you would have all other modes, ferries, all converging together under a mass. And you as a citizen or you as a commuter, you have the choice to plan at one go, use at one go, and pay at one go. And that is how it is. And it took a lot of time in the Western world also. I would say there have been failures there also. And there are limited successes, I would state. But in a country like India, there could be an adoption at a mass scale, at a public scale. And what has emerged is that technology is not the challenge. It is the governance architecture which is actually making the difference. We have been talking about AMTAs. Of course, these are the bodies, but within the body, if that body could actually articulate and state that all the suppliers of the, I would say, systems, be it a metro or a bus or an auto or Uber or Ola or for that matter any other private mode of transport also, they have to share data. The moment this happens, the present fiefdoms which are actually there would get diluted. And imagine a customer or a commuter also. Now what you are doing is you are now using that particular platform. So you have also migrated to that platform. You are throwing data. And that data is your origin destination data. And it is at trip level, fractional level. But if you do it at a corridor level, you are giving huge amount of data for the other segments to actually provide you those flexible services. Metro may not be able to provide you those flexible services, but others would be able to provide you those flexible services. So data needs to be opened up. That is the fundamental thing of mass. The second is the architecture also needs to be opened up. It has to be the API framework which enables adoption. And we have seen it, we have examples of UPI. We have examples of Arogya Setu. We have examples of CoWIN. Open frameworks, open APIs have enabled, and mass can also be doing this if you have these open APIs. And importantly to note here along with this, when we talk about resilience, in the case of mass, the resilience in terms of commercial structuring of mass. Because mass is a platform which has to continue. You have the suppliers of the systems, you have the users for the system. Somebody has to pay for this particular platform structure, whether it is private sector which has developed the mass or whether it is the public sector which has developed the mass. But somebody has to pay, and the payment is actually very minuscule. But you have to allow that, and that is what is actually going to be happening in the UPI also. So for mass also, you have to have a commercial structure which is an enabler for running this particular service, mass as a service. Examples are there in the world that mass was created by the private sector, and there is a company called Vim. Vim is not a, Vims and Fancies nahi hai, it's a Vim company which was the, I would say, pioneer in mass. Private sector initiative, बल्कि उसको seed funding भी मिला, they went ahead, they ran it for about 5 odd years, but then they closed. The reason was very simple, उनके खर्चे ज़्यादा थे प्लेटफॉर्म चलाने के और लेकिन उनको इनकम नहीं आ रहा था. There was a learning from there. Berlin, I would say, had a better structure based on the learnings of Vim. उनकी मास का एग्जाम्पल बोलते हैं वो, मैं हिंदी में इसलिए बोलता हूँ, वो जलेबी ऐप है उसका. एक्चुअली नाम उसका जलबी है पर मेरे को याद नहीं रहता तो आई मेड द वर्ड जलेबी. एंड आई सेड इंडिया में अगर उनको लाना है तो वी कैन कॉल देम एज अ जलेबी ऐप, यू नो. बट इट इज अ गवर्नमेंट backed initiative developed by the private sector but backed by the government. And coming to India, I would be glad to state that in pieces, in controlled environment, in sandbox initiatives, UMTC has tested the mass. Two modes of transport coming together, and actually you are able to see it and you are able to book also with one payment mechanism. But it was under controlled environment. Of course, it was a sandbox initiative. The results have been given to the ministry. And the important thing to note is that those APIs were also by the open source community. So everything actually which is open is an enabler for mass which can be adopted. I would stop here because I've taken a little long route, but maybe mass requires a little longer route. So that is how it is.
I agree with Nathani Saab that it is not bhar, it is to reduce number of apps. And he has talked that it should be, any app, common app should be backed by government funding. Now I move on to Professor Darshini Mahadevia, that what indicators and performance metrics should be used to measure resilience in urban mobility systems?
Indicators are extremely important for monitoring the implementation of policies, programs and projects. And so we have done some work on indicator-based approach to low carbon transport, but that can be extended to resilient and inclusive transport. We came up with a framework where we said that indicators will be falling in 6 categories. The first is economic category, infrastructure, environment, governance, social, and the fourth category is technology. Generally, in terms of policy, when we have done the policy analysis, we find that there are a lot of policies which are talking about technology in transport. For example, we've been talking in transport about transition to EV, or we are talking about fuel, etc. But there are certain indicators which, for which we are not yet monitoring. So this is the framework that we have 6 categories of indicators, and then we can list indicators in that. Now we also have suggest that there will be 2 kinds of indicators which are input indicators, such as infrastructure indicators are all input indicators. To give an example, our indicators on infrastructure, we have done service level benchmark at the ministry, and which requires revision now with new indicators to be added, and even some of the service levels to be made more chain to, for example, footpath width or the construction of footpath and etc. So if you are thinking of transiting to low carbon mobility, then we need to change these infrastructures, the service level benchmarks of some of the infrastructure. For environment also we have emission standards and so on. So for this, but there's new thing which we don't have, and we need our two outcome indicators. One is is social indicators. Has any transport system increased mobility of, let's say, specially abled population, or mobility of kids, or mobility of women in low-income populations and so on, or increase that mobility? Sometimes we think that it is increase in trip length or multiple trips, but mobility, rather than mobility, we could also talk about accessibility, access to various services, employment, etc. And we can construct, in fact, we have made a list of about some 100 indicators that could be there, but we can always shortlist and see which are more relevant indicators. We also looked at, there are many countries which are using this indicator approach. So we have also listed indicators which are used by Sri Lanka, Japan, Bangladesh, etc., etc. So which is now coming as a method to measure our policies, assess our policies, our projects, and it. Now, one thing that is, I need to say that this idea of indicators started with human development in indices in 1990, when UNDP came up with this indicator approach to measuring development. Now, there is, when we decide what is the minimum required for an indicator that we need to achieve. So, for example, in education, they had said that minimum required is 100% literacy rate and so on, which is value tied assessment of indicators. So when we talk about indicators, they are not just simple numbers, but there are values attached to it, and these values are attached, the values that are attached to the indicators are all very society and context specific values, and those could be need to be debated and discussed before coming to a standard. I mean, you can't say that in this city the trip length will be only 5 kilometers or 5.5 kilometers. Somebody said, why not 5.6 and why not 5.4? So how do we achieve at these numbers in indicators, which will then lead us to develop matrices, is more complex, but it needs to be put on table and debated.
Yes, I agree that it's a very, very complex thing that you have mentioned about 100 indicators you have identified, but we have to see what are the impacts, what weightages should be given, how we will define those things. So this is, yes, it's a complex process, it needs a more deliberation. Now I move to Mr. Sharif Kamar from Terry again. And what we heard about this hydrogen fuel based system in transport. So what are the current challenges in hydrogen fuel systems? How do you see these projects, technology will come in country, and we will see more number of hydrogen buses in country? You are in Terry, and you will be in a better position to tell us.
Sure, sir. So, if I'm not wrong, there are about 4 to 5 fuel technologies already existing right now. We are adding more technologies as we speak. We are talking about ethanol 85, E85. We are talking about higher blending of ethanol in the gasoline to about 27-30%. We are talking about electric vehicles. We are now also piloting hydrogen-based and hydrogen-run buses and vehicles. We did a study about 4 to 5 years back on hydrogen and the possibility and probability of hydrogen taking up, particularly in different sectors, but particularly in transport as well. And as part of our stakeholder discussions with the manufacturers, with the system operators, with the vending or dispensing providers, OMCs, as well as the modeling work that we did. Terry analysis says that nothing before 2035 that we see a scalable uptake of hydrogen-based vehicle, particularly in the HDV sector, which is buses and trucks. MNRE has been doing pilots across about 8 to 10 corridors, if I'm not wrong. But that's a pilot scale. There are definite challenges in terms of dispensing. There are definite challenges in terms of cost. We are looking at the viability will come in when the green hydrogen costs would come down to about $2 per kg. We have come down from about $10 per kg to about $4.5, $5 per kg right now. And green hydrogen, if you compare it with gray hydrogen, the cost is about 50% lower or more. So one, of course, the cost of running and the dispensing, the operational cost will add up. And given the background that I said of multi-fuel approach, hydrogen will add another dimension to the transportation sector. And that would be a big challenge for the stakeholders to tackle with in terms of safety, in terms of optimization, in terms of profitability, in terms of operational viability. And therefore, we feel that nothing beyond before 2035 is something that we look at from a scalable hydrogen deployment. We do have a concern right now, EVs taking up substantial share in the four-wheelers, and therefore the CNG stations that we are building and we have built, that would go redundant and there would be a sunk cost. So, I mean, there are scenarios like that, but if you put one, from an India's perspective, if you put all your eggs in one basket, that would also be a risky proposition, because in this current EV scenario, we are still dependent on China for the battery cells and battery. But yes, hydrogen would take a lot of time to kind of scale up. This short answer to your question. In the EV, I think in your first question that you put, I missed answering the challenges part of EVs.
Yes.
And that's where on this platform I would request NIUA to take up the building, the bylaws in the building codes to ensure that charging infrastructure, which is a challenge right now as an EV user myself, I feel that that's a big challenge on the highways particularly. But talking to people who want to shift to EVs, one of the basic challenges that they highlight, and people have gone to Supreme Court to this, is that how do we convince RWAs to allow us to set up a charging plug at my own parking slot. When we purchase an AC, we do not have to get a permission from RWA. And EVs, in the same sense as the right to charge, we need to ensure that these topics are covered from a regulatory perspective, so that there is no on-ground implementation challenge that people would face. Thank you, sir.
So, in your opinion, that this hydrogen will roll out around 2035, and as far as challenges for EV, that building bylaws have to be amended, and person should be allowed to provide this charging at its parking place. Okay. Thank you. Now I come to Aswati Dilip. What strategy can improve first and last mile connectivity to enhance public transport ridership and reduce dependence on informal private transport? Because this first and last mile, any transport system we provide, whether it is metro, RRTS or anything, bus system, first and last mile connectivity is a big challenge in India. In India, across the world also, I have seen in Europe also, this is a big challenge. And if you travel in public transport, mass public transport system, it is cheaper, and when I go out, it is costly. So it is a big challenge. So I want to
Sure, sir. Thank you so much for the question once again. Sometimes I think the complex questions might have simple solutions, but like the way we heard in the morning, implementation becomes the challenge. So firstly, to start with, public transport in our cities is the backbone. We've kind of already discussed that already. Now, but yes, like you mentioned, I live just 5 minutes away from a really good quality metro station, which is next to my house. This is my office is just 2 stations away from the station that's close to my house. The urban local body that I used to once visit very often, which used to take 1 hour on road, I would reach it in 20 minutes. On the other direction, the airport was just 20 minutes. If I had to come to a place like Delhi, like today, it would have been extremely comfortable to come. The problem, as Sir mentioned, is the last mile connectivity. It's just 5 minutes walking distance, but to walk that route is extremely difficult because there isn't walking infrastructure. I need to cross an extremely wide 8-lane road, which is one way, which is very, very difficult. So in any case, in Chennai, we had done a study of 50% of the metro stations, which were completed in as a part of the phase 1 metro. And the idea was to understand how do these commuters actually access the metro station. Now, the study showed that 44% of the commuters that we had surveyed were actually walking to the metro station. Another 25% took all sorts of shared modes, auto rickshaws, shared autos, as well as some of them came in buses and then taxis as well. Now, it was the remaining component that was coming, that was getting dropped mostly by a two-wheeler, a private two-wheeler or a four-wheeler. Very few people were actually bringing their private vehicles, especially because there is no place to park in any case. Now, in this particular context, for the same study, when we had done audits, infrastructure audits, 20 out of 21 stations did not have footpaths which were safe, continuous to actually use. In fact, 20 out of 21 stations did not have footpath that met the basic width requirements. Now, similarly, 19 out of 20 stations had junctions which ranked less than 2 out of 5 in terms of safety requirements. And finally, the third thing was that most of these stations were on extremely high-speed corridors, because these are trunk corridors. So citizens, when they're accessing these stations, really need to put their life in a lot of danger if they were 44% of them were walking. So in terms of strategies, I would say that the strategy that we require, one, is that we really need to ensure that there are continuous, shaded, universally accessible footpaths around our bus route and metro stations. This is the basic foundation, because most people who use these modes do walk to the stations. Secondly, when we are done on top of this, people near transit survey and mapping on GIS to understand, okay, if people are unable to use the buses, what is the issue? It was that most of the inner neighborhoods were extremely narrow, so that these buses could not ply through those. So the second strategy that I would talk about is that we really need to deploy high frequency but mini buses, because many of our neighborhoods from where the citizens come to these trunk routes are narrower streets. And Chennai, for example, has just tendered out around 500 to 700 electric mini buses, which will run at 5-minute frequency to enable the last mile connectivity in a better manner. Now, the third thing is often, so sometimes we provide all these services, but because the pickup or the drop-off facilities are not clearly provided, there's a lot of chaos and discomfort at the last level as well. So so it's important for us to plan our stops and stations such a way that there's organized pickup and drop-off facilities for auto rickshaws, shared mobility, even where these the last mile connectivity buses would be as well. While all of this are infrastructure requirements, the last thing that I would add is that in our surveys, we realized that most people were saying that wayfinding was a big issue. Sometimes there are underpasses that are built in the metro stations, but people cross these big roads because they do not know where the underpass actually starts or ends. Similarly, there might be a place where you can get a minibus, but it might be 5 minutes away and they don't know that that minibus would be there. So the last point that I would really say, that whatever services that we provide, whatever infrastructure, if we do not build it along with a clear, intuitive wayfinding, then it will fail us. So people really need clear wayfinding to safely navigate the entire journey. Pause there. Thank you so much, sir.
You have aptly covered this topic that we should have adequate footpath, and you have mentioned about Chennai study wherein footpath is not available, and on some of these stations we feel that if proper footpath is there, then we may see surge in the ridership. And you rightly mentioned that for first and last mile connectivity we don't need 9 meter or 12 meter bus, it should be minibus. Then yes, I agree that wayfinding is a good suggestion, that everybody should know where they will get bus, and it can be through one app also, that they can get this information on their mobile, that this bus is available in so much time. So this kind of thing can be think of. My question to now Mr. Nathani. How digitization of the public transport is making public transport more accessible and commuter friendly? That do you feel the digitization which we are doing through NCMC or QR code ticketing, is it enough, or we have to see beyond this?
Thank you, Mr. Jaideep. If we were to talk about 2 decades back, digitization was generally taken as a back-end thing. Today, digitization is not only back-end, but it is front-loaded also. Now, I'll come to the NCMC or the payment or the QR ticketing a bit later. But yes, when you talk about accessibility and improving the customer friendliness or the commuter friendliness, accessibility means, I would say in my case, it is the accessibility of information, which could be internal to a system or it could be commuter facing information. If a person wants to use, he needs information. So accessibility is not in terms of the physical infrastructure, for example, which was given by my colleague, but it is through the digitized information system. Now, examples are there, and the prime example is NCRTC. You have all the metro rail corporations across India. Accessibility of information is there for the commuter. Internally also they are getting a lot of information because everything has been to that extent digitized. Now, if I were to talk about internally, in case of metros, they are at a general level getting an OD pattern. They are also getting sectional loads, but metro being a rigid system, it cannot reimagine itself on its own. But the digitization, which is actually, I would say, not up to the level till now, is for the paratransit in India and the bus system. Let me be honest with you. Some technology has been deployed for the bus system, be it customer facing or be it internal, but technology is there, the deployment has been there in bits and pieces, but there is still an issue because you may not be having the right system integrator. System integrators are there in the metro, examples can be taken from them, but in case of the public transport, specifically the buses and the paratransit, it is not at the level which is actually required. More so because the buses or the other paratransit are the main choice of system. Metro is there, but it is only for a few cities. But in majority of the cities, it is not there. It is the bus or the paratransit. Having said that, I would again compliment the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Under the PM Bus Seva, they are planning to digitize practically everything for the buses. My only request would be that this initiative should be extended to the existing buses also, because that would become all inclusive. In any case, you are developing that system. Not only do it for the e-buses, but for the other modes, other typology of buses, be it CNG or be it, for that matter, diesel. Diesel will eventually get phased out, but that is how it is. So digitization is an enabler. It has been demonstrated by the metros and the NCRTC, but it needs to be actually deployed at scale for the buses. And small things, for example, GTFS. Now the infrastructure mapping of a bus stop is a very basic thing. Even a pole is a bus stop. उसको भी आप digitize कर दो. You can give it an acronym and leave it at that. कुछ cities में हो गया है, GTFS deploy भी हो गया है, but majority of the cities में हुआ नहीं है. And it is a very simple and a basic need for a Google map, and that is how it is. And it is possible. Technology is not a challenge. It's just that we need to give it a little thrust and make it sort of mandatory. Thank you.
Now I come to Mr. Shalabh Goyal. They are developing semi-high speed regional connectivity system, and in such type of system, transit oriented development is very, very important. So how do you see transit oriented development policy can create compact, connected and economically vibrant urban regions? Over to Shalabh.
Thank you. What would a daily commuter want? A daily commuter would want that his office and his living space should be near to each other. So transit-oriented development brings the home and his office space nearer. And whatever distance is there between the two, it is connected by the transit network, RRTS in our case. Generally what happens is that whenever any transit system is coming up, or RRTS kind of a system or a metro system, the prices of the land, etc. go up. It is the developers who benefit, but the government, the state government does not benefit, the central government does not benefit, and the transit agency does not benefit out of that. So if a well-framed transit oriented development is done, everyone is going to gain out of that. As I said earlier, the daily commuter gets his home which is near to his office, number one. Whatever his needs of school or a hospital, everything gets developed in that area of influence zone of that transit oriented development area. Is getting all the things near him. And whatever the land value capture is carried out of that, the municipality or the state government gets money out of that, out of the additional FAR or the additional stamp duty, and out of that something can be shared with the transit development agency as well. So I mean, what I mean to say is that if it is properly framed, properly executed, everyone stands to gain. And an example of this is what we did in Uttar Pradesh along with government of UP. Now, two new cities like Harnandipuram and New Meerut towns, they are coming up because of this densification of cities around the complete transit corridors, and the areas have been identified, special development areas have been identified, and people believe me that the youngsters who were coming to Delhi earlier and staying in Delhi. Now they are living in Meerut or Modipuram area using our transit RRTS systems instead of staying in a costly hostel in North Delhi. Now they are staying in Modipuram Meerut area, in which and the densification of that area is also taking place. So it's a win-win situation for everyone, and it is not only Meerut in India. If we talk about Nagpur, the Nagpur Maha Metro has been given the role of special planning authority has been given to them. As a result of that, they are able to plan the areas near that near the metro stations, and as a result of this, they are also getting the benefit of additional 1% additional surcharge in the 500 meters area. At 50% of that revenue shared between the municipality and the Maha Metro. Similar kind of a thing is being done in Mumbai. Similar kind of a thing is being done in Gujarat as well. But the other cities in India, they have to follow. The best example, as I was reading, is in Hong Kong. Most of us may be knowing about that. But to me, it is something new that the complete planning around the metro station is given to their MTR. MTR runs the metro systems over there. The land development rights are given to them. They are planning the residential spaces, hotels, etc., and so many other things, which are very well connected. And for the commuters, it really becomes very easy because they don't have to go far. And the rights for additional FAR are in that transit-oriented area, TOD zone, the influence zone, and as you go away, the applicable FAR, the permissible FAR, that goes down. In fact, they have also come out with a model called as tall building TB-TOD model, in which they are constructing tall buildings over the metro stations so that a portion of that is being used as a residence, a portion of that is being used as a commercial space. It becomes self-sustainable. The metro system becomes self-sustainable. They don't have to depend upon the government. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. And in Hong Kong, I was reading, there are several other examples. Specific to be Lohas Park is one such place where they have done it. Then there's one Tising Yi station where they have done it. Then there's West Kowloon station where they have done it. So there are several examples where it has been done very, very effectively, and we in India, we are also trying to do, but now this message needs to spread to all the other countries, to other cities as well, where especially the metros are coming up. And now we have to go beyond the policy regime. Now it has to be at the stage of implementation, and since I represent a transit agency, it is of utmost importance that whatever land value capture is done, whatever VCF instrument the state government wants to do, a portion of that, 50% of that should be shared with the transit agency as well. Then that would be the real sort of win-win situation for everyone, including the commuters, the state government and the transit agencies. Thank you.
He has rightly covered these issues that transit agencies must get benefit out of whatever has been infrastructure has been created. Mostly it is taken by private, and government will be benefited. Government will not be burdened with losses and loan repayment. And these metro or RRTS organization become self-sufficient. And he has mentioned about Hong Kong example. It's the best example, that tall building along with TOD, and this tall building at a station itself, where some commercial space is there and residential as well as office space is there. And our metro system and RRTS system is maturing, and now we are exceeding 1,000 kilometers. Now there is a active thinking on these lines, and in times to come we will see lot of development on the pattern of Hong Kong. We are coming to this end of the session, and I will request the chairperson to conclude this session.
Thank you. And I think some very relevant questions have been raised by Jagdeep and some very informed answers by our panelists. And what I take away from this is that resilient connectivity has to start at the planning stage itself, because that's where everything starts from. And the sounder our plans are, the better it will be in the long run. Some of the cities perhaps require to be retrofit, which is difficult, but some of the smaller cities, we can try to make them more compact. We do not want a case where the trip length, like that's what each pointed out, has gone up in Delhi. We don't know what, it's beyond 11. Okay. So cities be compact. The other thing is, which we learned from NCRTC, is that redundancy, resilience has to be built into the designs. If a system has been designed correctly, these things have been thought of, and the designs incorporates these redundancies, then the challenges, the system can absorb whatever shocks and challenges that there are. There's definitely a need for high quality public transport. There's a need for certainly for non-motorized transport infrastructure, because that is what is used when there is any adverse effect. Station designs have to improve to enable first and last mile connectivity that we have seen all along. As somebody pointed out, we need open data, we need data standards, we need systems to talk to each other, because then only mobility as a service is possible. And institutionally also, we need some kind of institutions, maybe UMTAs, who can ensure that these things happen. And if we want to capture or share the land where you capture revenues, there has to be some kind of institutional arrangement which enables this to happen. So whether it's a special planning authority or role which has been given to Mahametro, whether it is through some other means, it has to be ensured that there's an equitable distribution of land value capture revenue. With that, I would like to thank all the panelists for a very enriching discussion, and I hope we have learned enough to now move on to the real challenge, which is implementation of all these ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saab, Chairman of this session. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our distinguished speakers for what was truly a very, very substantive session. I think there were some excellent observations throughout the dais, and you've really given us some very compelling inputs and data to just sink our teeth into. And as Sir very rightly concluded, there's a lot that's been done, but there's a lot more that can be done to really cement the vision for Viksit Bharat. So thank you so much for your time. It's been really an honor to get to hear from all of you. And just as a last sort of item on our agenda for today, it would be really lovely if you would allow us some time to felicitate you and properly thank you for being here today. So first, if I could request Mr. Mathur and Shri Jaideep sir to please help us felicitate our speakers first. So we'll do this. Yes, please. We'll take our photos and everything. We'll do this one at a time. So. Okay, then first a huge thank you to Mr. Kishore Nathani. So since you're at that end.
This is
Okay. I'm so sorry. It's been a long day. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Ma'am, if you could. Yeah, can we have a round of applause, please? Okay. Next to Dr. Darshini Mahadevia. Ma'am, from that end is also. Okay. Next to Mr. Shailab Goel, please. Then, of course, to Mr. Sharif Kamar. Now, and then, of course, to Ms. Aswati Dilip. Now I please request Jaideep sir to please felicitate Mr. Mathur. And then, sir, thank you for your excellent moderation and your insights. I'll request Mr. Vigneshwar J, Senior Project Officer, NIUA, to felicitate you. Thank you. One group photo, please. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. A final round of applause, please, for our speakers. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you to the audience as well. Please proceed to the ground floor for dinner. Thank you for your time.